I'm Mike with House on the Mend, and in this video we're going to be reviewing the Black+decker 12-inch 40-volt cordless chainsaw, specifically the LCS1240. So let's get started.
If you break it, he will fix it. If you buy it, he will build it. House on the Mend.
Alright, so the unit I purchased was off of Amazon and it was refurbished, so it came in that plain brown cardboard box that you saw with nothing other than what you see here. No packaging, cushioning, nothing, not even the manual. So I downloaded the manual online, which was pretty easy, read through it, and here we go. Let's go through some of the nomenclature you see here. First of all, we have up top the lock button. So you pull the lock button back and then you squeeze the trigger control down here to start the saw. And this one, if you look right here, came with a zip tie safety. So I'm going to take these little wire snips and I'm going to cut that off. There we go. And now when we pull back the lock button, then the trigger switch works. We have the front handguard, and unlike a gas-powered chainsaw that also uses the handguard as a brake, we don't need that here since an electric chainsaw is never at idle. Now right up front here is the scabbard. It just slides right off. Make sure you keep this because you're going to always want to put it back on when you're not cutting. That way you keep the chain sharp for as long as possible. Now let's take a look here and we will see that exposed we have a full 12 inches of cutting. So that's interesting. Sometimes the bar is measured from way back here where it actually makes contact with the mechanisms that hold it in place. But in this case, we actually have a full 12 inches of cutting width, which is pretty great. All right, there's a very big sprocket cover here. And the thing that I'm most excited about with this unit is the bar adjust locking knob and the chain tensioning knob right here. So with most chainsaws that I have used, there is a one or two lock nuts right here that you have to use a separate tool to unlock, and then you have to put a screwdriver in this way or back here to loosen or tension the chain. It's pretty tedious, especially if you're just wanting to make a slight adjustment, whereas here you just simply back off the lock and then you can rotate this tensioning knob one way or the other to dial in literally the best tension for your chain, and then you lock it right back into place. That is really cool. So this is the front handle right here, and it has a slight angle to it to make it a little bit more comfortable when you're reaching over for cuts. Back here we have the rear handle, and it's got a very slight kind of rubbery feel to it, which is unlike my Husqvarna. That one's just straight plastic. The rigid comes with the same sort of rubbery feel to it, which I like. Now, up top here is the oil reservoir. It's just simply got a cap right here that you take off. Unlike some units, this one does not have a priming one. According to the manual, the 20-volt unit has a priming little bulb up on top. The Ryobi also has that priming bulb. This one does not. What's really cool about this one is inside of the reservoir for the bar chain oil, there is this filter, and it fits right in there. It's a little screen mesh, and so when you pour your bar chain oil in here, it will pre-filter it so you're not getting any debris. When you're out cutting firewood, you're going to be covered in sawdust, and if you're coming in here with your gloves on and you're pouring in oil, it's very easy for debris to get in there. And the fact that they put that little device in there, I just think is really ingenious. This little window right here is the reservoir. I did a review on the Ryobi pole saw and remarked at how pathetically small the oil reservoir was. I was constantly having to stop and fill that. Now this one, when I put my finger in here, it goes down to about right there, so almost at the bottom of this little window. But I measured it, it actually extends like all the way to here. So what you don't get in depth, horizontally, you're getting a lot more space. So I'm going to be interested to see how much goes in there and how long it lasts. All right, let's flip the unit around and to the angle off a little bit here. Now, right here is where the battery goes. And the battery simply slides on just like this and locks into place. Pretty secure there. On the battery itself, you simply squeeze the little orange piece on the back and that releases the battery. And it slides right off. Let's talk about the battery for a bit. This is a, of course, 40-volt battery, and what I like about the 40-volt as opposed to the Black+decker 20-volt is this actually has a battery life indicator. And when you have 3 like you do now, that's fully charged, so 72% to 100%. 2 bars is 45 to 72, and 1 bar is 18 to 45%. So when you start getting down to the bottom of the 1, the unit is no longer going to run, it just shuts off. The charger for the unit is very small with the Black+deckers. It's not a whole big thing that you click the battery into place. It's simply a little piece that goes up top. So that actually slides right on the same rails, right into place like that. Right here is the charge indicator. So you have this one light that can blink green or red. Anything in green means we are either in the process of charging, which is the blinking light, or solid green means it's finished. If it's ever blinking red, that's not a good thing. If it is blinking very fast red, that means that the battery is defective, and if you're getting a pulse of a long red, then a short red, long red, short red blink, that means the battery is either too hot or too cold. The best thing I find is you need to cool off these batteries for like 30 minutes inside the house, and it's best to charge them at room temperature. So whatever you're comfortable with is what batteries are basically comfortable with in charging. And I also store my batteries inside so that they're never subject to big sweeping temperature changes. All right, let's talk about bar chain oil. The unit I got did not come with any bar chain oil at all. Let us know in the comments if you got a unit that wasn't refurbished, if perhaps it does come with bar chain oil, but any bar chain oil will do. Let's talk about some of the ingredients though. I was reading in the manual and it recommended that if you're trimming a living tree branch, say you're pruning a living tree, they recommend that you purchase a vegetable oil based bar chain oil because that way it won't injure the living tree. They say not to use a mineral oil based lubricant for living trees. It could damage that wound that you create when you prune the branch off. So I thought that was interesting and wanted to share that. For any other purposes, any bar chain oil will do. I'll leave a link to a couple that I like. So to fill it up, let's go ahead and remove the cap, and then I have just this little automotive funnel that I like to use to make sure I don't make a mess. Let's watch the oil indicator here, and as I pour just a little bit, let's see how quickly it seems to fill up. I don't see much yet. Oop. All right, we're just starting to see the indication here, so that's good. Get just one more little gulp. And that brings us right up to the top. Now I'm just going to take that and pop it right into here. It can drip the rest of the way right back into the bar chain oil. And we'll put our cap back on. All right. Next, let's talk about tensioning the chain. So the manual specifically says that the chain should snap back into place when it's pulled down about 1/8 of an inch, and that is proper tensioning. They say not to have any slack in it at all. Usually I like to have a little bit of slack in my chains, especially my gas chainsaws, because there's so much heating and cooling going on that you get quite a bit of change. I don't like to have it too tight in the beginning. So this one, if we pull down, you can see I'm just gently pulling down. There's a little bit of slack there. And when we let go, it pops right back into place. Now that is a sign that this is properly tensioned. Now when I read the manual, it said this unit comes disassembled, that the chain and the bar are actually disassembled from the saw itself. As you saw when I pulled this one out of the box, it was completely assembled. Let us know in the comments if that's the case for you when you buy a brand new one. If it's not, and they are now coming fully assembled, you can skip past this part, or just for future knowledge, continue to watch. But we're going to take this whole assembly apart here, and we're going to simulate that we're putting it together for the first time, and also simulate that we're changing the chain out if it got dull. So, lefty loosey, righty tighty, we just unscrew this lock here. And you can see it's integral to the unit. It doesn't actually come apart. Right there is the threaded piece. Now we have the sprocket back here, and you can see that the bar comes back to this area here, and then there's a little free area here that goes up to the sprocket. And right here is where it is tensioned. It's held in place and then moved back and forth to tension. You can see if I pinch it like that, it becomes loose, and that enables us to pull it off the sprocket and remove the whole unit. Now if you notice on these bars, even though the writing is the same on both sides, if you look on most assemblies, they are exactly the same and can actually be put on either way, and that helps with wear and tear on the bar. This unit is not that way. If you see, it's got this piece here that you would have to go the extra step of undoing this and switching it around, and I'm not sure if it would be worth it for wear and tear on that, and the manual didn't talk about that at all. So if you were changing the chain out, the one thing you want to know when you orient the chain is look for, this is the actual cutting blade right here. You can see the arrows pointing towards the front, because the chain circles clockwise as you look at it. Another way to tell if you're putting the chain on the right way is there's this ramp right here leading up to the blade. So you want to make sure the ramp is in front of the blade, facing forward towards the front of the saw. All right, now let's get all that back into place. We're going to bring it back here, right back onto that sprocket. Here we go. Right. Slide the sprocket cover back into place, and we start screwing that down. Look around and make sure we're caught up on something here. It should be going in more than that. There we go. I was seeing it standing a little proud here, and it wasn't making contact here, so I had to kind of fumble around with it and pull the bar out a bit, but finally I got it. Now let's check that tension again. When I pull down here, it seems tighter than it was before, but I am able to get easily 1/8 of an inch, if not more. So I'm going to lock that right into place for good, and we're ready. All right, before we get ready to start cutting, what do you say we do a little noise check? Let's see how much sound this guy produces. You can hear it kind of did a slow ramp up until it got to full speed. Kind of a throaty sound. Let's compare that to the Ryobi 18 volt. All right, no slow ramp up. It's strictly full speed and a little higher pitch to my ears. All right, we're ready to start cutting. I've got hearing protection in, I've got eye protection. I'm gonna put some gloves on here. And we're getting ready to start. Now, to hold this piece of African sumac that we're gonna be cutting stable, I have a cinder block here, and it's got like a little groove in the bottom of it right here that a tree stump this size fits in really well. And that's going to help hold it in place, elevate it off the ground, and allow me to comfortably rest my foot on it and start making cuts. Now, a couple principles I want to talk about. First, safety. When you're making a cut with any chainsaw, it's best not to have anyone in front of the chainsaw, because in the unlikely event that the chain breaks, that chain could fly forward. You also want to try to keep your body on the left side of the chainsaw, so that if the chain breaks and it whips around towards the bottom, that hopefully it won't hit you right in the leg. Now, sometimes when you're cutting, that's just not practical, but it is a goal. Second principle, when you're cutting, you can rest the spikes on a chainsaw on the wood and help make like a cut angling into the wood, and then you come back, angle a little bit more. So you're always cutting a smaller area inside than the whole diameter of the log. Now, this Black+decker, the spikes on it are actually plastic pieces of the body, not true metal spikes like the Husqvarna chainsaw I have, but let's see how it does. Well, it's not liking this log at all. That's twice that it's cut out on me. This is a freshly charged battery. We've got a full thing of bar chain oil and a fresh chain on here, and it's not liking cutting this guy at all. I'm not even bearing down on it very much. Yeah, I don't even know if we're going to make it through this log. There we go. All right. Now, let's get a little comparison, and let's try this Ryobi 10-inch 18-volt chainsaw. It too has a fresh blade, a fresh 3 amp-hour battery, and plenty of oil in it. This is a 10-inch chainsaw, and we actually have about 9.5 inches of reveal to cut with. And as you can see here, that's going to be more than enough for this, like 8.5 to 9-inch log. So let's give it a try. Jumping a lot. Oh, there's our first cutout. I also smell electrical pretty decent on here, like the battery's getting hot, but it's not. It's not the battery, it must be the motor. Let me get my glove back on and we'll see if this Ryobi can handle this African Sumac. Got some smoke coming out of the motor cavity here. There we go. All right. There's quite a bit of smoke coming out right here. I'm not sure if you can see that. Smoke coming out here too. Now I wasn't bearing down on it. I was letting the weight of the saw do most of the work. Give this little guy a break. Alright, after one cut with the Black+decker, as I look here, we are about 2/3 of the way down in oil. So that reservoir is not really deep enough to handle the amount of oil that the saw naturally puts out during a cut. Let's see if we can make one more, and then I'll have to fill it again. That did pretty good on that one. The only time it cut out that time is when I was trying to use these spikes to actually get some leverage down on it. It's better if you just let the weight of the saw take it down through the log. All right, let's check the chain tensioning and see how that's doing. That's about the same, which is nice. That means that the heat hasn't affected the tightness of the chain in one way or the other. After two cuts, we're already down to only one bar on the battery, so I don't think I'm going to reach my honeydew goal of getting all these logs cut with these guys today. And after 2 cuts, we're completely out of bar chain oil. So let me go get another battery and more bar chain oil, and we'll see just what we can do with 2 batteries. All right, so both saws are kind of struggling with that African sumac, but that's a really heavy, dense wood. This is a tree that actually died on our property, and it's pretty light. I forget what the name of this breed is, but let's try cutting this guy and see how it does. This is also a much smaller diameter, probably, yeah, like 6 inches. So let's see if it can handle this a little better. Okay, that's a lot better. Oh, good. I was starting to wonder. Yeah, it took care of that, no problem at all. All right, this saw's really redeeming itself. I'm almost full in this wheelbarrow over here. I think it's going to be much more suited to 6-inch diameter and under logs. This small branch is about 10 or 12 feet long here. Let's see how many cuts we can get. We're still on the original battery and the second fill of bar chain oil, and we're just seeming to hit our stride here. Let's let the Ryobi do one. A lot jumpier. Oh, I couldn't even make this little one. Aww. All right, like, that's pretty impressive. We're still on the first battery. Hey, this is something I just realized. Check this out. With the Black+decker, you can see what the reading is on the battery. With the Ryobi, the way it's made, the battery indicator is on the other side. This you can't tell from here, so you would have to physically remove the battery to check how it's doing. I like this a lot better. All right, I think this could easily keep going, but we're running out of daylight. I filled this entire wheelbarrow full of pieces from the first stuff we started with that was, what, 9 inches in diameter, down to these little itty bitty branches here, and it's handling them all, with the exception of the really big ones, very, very well. I've gone through 2 reserves of the bar chain oil. This is the 3rd time I filled it, and I made a few more cuts here, and we still have plenty. This is the first battery that I put in, and it's still got 1 bar. I think when I first showed you that it was already down, it was because it was getting really worn out by cutting these big 9-inch diameter logs. It's been handling everything else no problem. I'm interested to see how far it would go on this battery, but I still want to take advantage of a little bit of the daylight we have left to look at some other things. First of all, I want to look right in here and see how filled up we are with gook. I do see quite a bit of sawdust in there and oil, which is to be expected because that means the bar chain oil is doing its job and lubricating, and that all looks really good. I can see obvious signs of the bar chain oil all over the bar. It is very, very oily, so that's something to consider. The next thing I want to do is set this saw overnight right next to the Ryobi, and let's do a leak test. All right, we're just going to repurpose the box that the Black+decker chainsaw came in. It's a nice dry box, no blemishes whatsoever on the inside of that cardboard. So let's set both of these saws. They still have quite a bit of bar chain oil in them, which isn't the best way to store them, but for the purposes of this test, let's see what happens when they sit out overnight. All right, 24 hours later, and we can see clearly here a bunch of the bar chain oil off the bar itself has leaked onto the cardboard. That could have been easily remedied by actually wiping it up before we set it down. Let's check underneath. Nothing. That's good. All right, now the Ryobi. Oh, looks like there's a little bit right here, and that would have been right in the opening area where the debris is supposed to come out. I think that also could have been remedied by wiping the tool down prior to storing it. So I would say they both did a pretty good job. All right, this video is already over 30 minutes, so let's wrap it up with the pros and cons and who I think this chainsaw is for. But first, if you found this video helpful, will you please give it a thumbs up? It really helps the YouTube algorithm to suggest it to more people. Also, please consider subscribing. I work really hard to put out good quality content, and there's more videos to come. The pros. The battery life turned out to be excellent. As you saw, I filled an entire wheelbarrow with just one battery. The chainsaw was well balanced front to back and side to side. The cuts were very steady, unlike the Ryobi that was constantly bouncing. The chain stayed properly tensioned throughout the day and never had to be adjusted. And I was very happy with the leak test, although I'd still be very careful to put something underneath it in storage. Now the cons. Once again, I'm very disappointed with the small oil reservoir. It was way better than the Ryobi pole saw that I previously reviewed, but still required 4 fills per battery, which is just ridiculous. I used to regularly cut firewood up at our cabin in Utah with my gas-powered chainsaw, and I loved that the gas and bar chain oil lasted the same amount of time. Next, I feel the chainsaw is underpowered for a 12-inch bar. I would love to hear in the comments if you've cut any softwoods over 10 inches with it. So who's this chainsaw for? I would recommend it for anyone needing to cut softwoods like pine and aspen, but not for hardwoods like oak or maple. It absolutely struggled with the 9-inch African Sumac. There is no anti-kickback nose on the front, so be very careful not to use the tip when cutting, which could cause the saw to lurch up and cause injury. However, the lack of that nose combined with its light weight makes it potentially useful for ice and log sculptors. Speaking of the lightweight, I was hoping I could recommend it to the log home builders out there. Years ago, I built a log home with the help of my neighbor, and we had a small 110-volt chainsaw on hand because it didn't need to warm up for several minutes just to make a quick cut, and because it was much easier on the shoulders when cutting out the doors and windows. Now, while I think it could handle 6 and 8-inch softwood cutoffs, I don't think it would efficiently cut out doors and windows. The bar does have little attachment points at the front, which could be used for attachments such as a log wizard style log peeler, which are great for shaving flat spots on a log for outlets and light switches. We did that throughout our log home, and I thought it was a great design element. I'll leave links below for all of the items I've discussed. Now, full disclosure, these are affiliate links, so if you click on them and end up making a purchase, it won't cost you a thing, but I do get a small reward at the end of the month. It helps to justify the time and the money it takes to make these videos. Until next time, thank you for watching.